Our chief guest speaker for today is Shri Bharat Bhamavle. I request everyone to please put your questions in the chat box that will be read later. I'd request the Dean of Goa Business School, Professor M.S. Dayanand, to kindly address the gathering.
Good morning. A very warm welcome, Bharatji, to you. Welcome to Goa Business School. I'll just give you a very brief idea about the business school. We were formed into a business school in 2018. 2019, in fact. April 2019, we were formed into a business school by coming together of four different departments which were existing as erstwhile departments. One was the Department of Computer Science, the other one was the Department of Commerce, third was the Department of Economics, and fourth was the Department of Management Studies. So these four disciplines are now combined, and we have formed the business school, Goa Business School. We are offering currently we are offering 8 programs. The 9th program will be offered in the area in 2021-22 academic year. There are 2 programs which are offered currently by the computer science. That's the MCA. We have a very interesting integrated 5-year data sciences program after the 12th. So that's just started last year. So that's one of our new initiatives. We have one program run by the economics discipline, which is an MA in economics, which is a standard course which is done. The MBA has got 3 programs which are being run. One is the MBA general program. Students are here for that. And we have an MBA executive program, which is basically an evening program. It's a 3-year evening program. And the third one is a integrated MBA in hospitality and tourism, which we started around 11 years ago. That is doing exceedingly well. So we have students who get an exposure to the hospitality industry as well. We have 2 programs which are run by, as I said, the computer science program. We have one program run by the commerce discipline, which is the MCOM program, and one program run by the financial services discipline, which is the MBA in financial services. It's an exclusive MBA in the area of financial services. So these are the 8 programs which are done. We are planning to start an MA in environmental sciences from next academic year. It's 21-22 academic year. And I think the foundation for that has already been done. So we should be able to have about 9 programs. The Fomento series is one of the initiatives of Professor Nilesh Korde. He's brought this out, and we have eminent speakers who come here on this program. So it's a very interesting thing for all of us to have you here and listen to your expertise in the area of marketing as well as in the area of businesses, so that students can have an exciting future. So welcome, a very warm welcome again, once again to you, Bharatji, and a warm welcome to all of you, all the students. I can see the number 61 here, which is pretty good. I hope more from other areas also will join. Thank you so much, and over to you, Ridya, for the further process.
Thank you, sir. I would like to welcome and introduce our guest speaker, Shri Bharat Bhamavle. Shri Bharat Bhamavle is considered one of India's leading marketing practitioners. He has spent 36 years in marketing and advertising, out of which he spent 18 years as a global executive with marketing communication companies Lowe and Partners and J. Walter Thompson. Early in his career at Ogilvy India, he was seconded to Hindustan Unilever for 2 years. During this time, he received a profound and sustained exposure to Unilever's approach to marketing. This triggered an association with Unilever as a client that lasted for 23 years. In 1993, he joined the founding team of Lintas Middle East North Africa in Dubai as a regional account director on Unilever. Thereafter, he became the managing director of Loeb and Partners, Middle East North Africa. In 2003, he was transferred to Bangkok as Loeb and Partners Asia Pacific client leader. In 2007, he moved to London as J. Walter Thompson's global director on Unilever. Collectively, this regional and global assignments kept him overseas for 18 years. On his return to India in 2011, he became Airtel's first and only global brand director, leading the Airtel brand through the strategic repositioning that connected it to India's youth with industry-leading communications such as "हर एक friend जरूरी है यार" and "जो मेरा है वो तेरा है." Since 2013, he runs his eponymous brand and marketing consultancy, Bharat Bhamawale and Associates. His clients span a wide range of business sectors. Through his career, he helped shape the fortunes of many national, regional, and global brands. This has put him at a vantage point to observe and experience the underlying principles that drive customers. His first book, Nine Timeless Nuggets: The Essential Marketing for the Young and the Ambitious, published by the Penguin Random House India, has just been launched. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Shri Bharat Bhamawale. Sir.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I would just like to, at the very start of this session, first of all, thank Goa University and Goa Business School for the invitation to be here. A very, very special thank you to Dean Professor M.S. Dayanand for not only his invitation, but also his kind words at the start of this session. Professor Nilesh Borde for all his contact with me to coordinate and make this session possible. And of course, to all the students on this call, all the members of faculty, members of the Goa Business School community, thank you very much for your invitation. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you this morning. It is a special pleasure because I am what you could call son-in-law of Goa. My wife is Goan, and my wife of 32 years is Goan, and we have had a long association with Goa, not least of which our present place of residence is in Goa. We live in Seoli, and we travel all around the country on work, but we primarily live in Seoli. For that reason, it gives me a special pleasure to join the students of Goa Business School in this session today. Now, very soon, I'm going to share a presentation with you, which will be the basis on which I'll talk about many of the essential principles of marketing, which are important in our present times. Before that, just a couple of hygiene comments. If for some reason the power fails where I am and the Wi-Fi drops, just be patient. I'll get reconnected onto the call through 4G, through hotspotting my phone. So don't worry if for some reason the connection is interrupted, because I'll just get back up soon. And the second thing I'll say is that I will present for approximately 1 hour. If during that time, for some reason, you don't see my face, you only see the slides, my apologies for that. But I hope that the technology allows you to both see the slides as well as see me. So I'm going to present for about an hour, maybe a little more. And after that, there'll be time for questions. And then when we are at that stage of the session, we can take stock again about how we're doing. And we can hopefully conclude the session by about 11:30, which is 11:30 a.m. this morning. So hope that's all right. And let me at this point turn to my presentation so that I can start to talk to you a little bit more about the topic of today's talk. Can everyone see my screen? I'll need somebody to answer me can somebody unmute and tell me whether you can see a screen which has the title of
Yes,
today's
sir. We
talk
can
on
see.
it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Because I can't see you guys anymore. Can you see my face as well?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. So let's begin. Now, I've titled this talk Essential Marketing for the Young and Ambitious because I hope all the students are, well, certainly much younger than me, and hopefully, and certainly, you will all be very ambitious as well. Here you are at the threshold of your careers. Here you are in the final stages of your education, preparing yourself to go out into the world and take on challenges of various kinds in various industries. And no matter which industry you work in, no matter which sector of an industry you work in, no matter which job you decide you want to do, no matter what course and arc your career takes, marketing is going to be at the center of it because marketing is such an essential part of everything we do. Now, you are both young, you are both ambitious, and you are also at the threshold of requiring a very fundamental and very basic grasp of what are the principles of marketing, because the principles of marketing are but there are certain updates that we need to give the essential principles of marketing from time to time in order to make them relevant for the times. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, nobody can ignore that we are passing through a very, very unusual stage, phase, period in the history of mankind, and of course, in the history of business, brands, and marketing. We are in times where there is a considerable impact on business of the pandemic, and many businesses are at the moment seriously looking at ways in which they can come back into some of the strength that they used to have previously. There have been some fairly deep changes in the way customers behave. There have been some deep changes in the way customers will respond to brands. There have been very immense difficulties that customers have faced in terms of their affordability, what they can buy, how much income they have to dispose, what are their essentials and what are their luxury items. So there's been a huge churn that the pandemic has brought about. When you respond to a situation like this, there are many ways that you can look at responding. One way is that you respond with tactics. You make pack sizes smaller, you make prices slightly less, you find new ways to create opportunities for the customer to buy you, and so on. And those are all important. But in my talk today, I want to take you beyond tactics, and I want to take you beyond the textbook. I want to take you to certain fundamental principles that govern how people behave and why they buy, which are timeless and eternal, as I said. I want to take you to think about not just the present times, not just the COVID pandemic, because that will pass. And in your careers of more than 30 years that lie in front of you, you will see many different challenges. You will see many different ways in which you will need to respond as a marketeer. And therefore, I want to take you recognizing the importance of the moment, recognizing the need for a lot of clever and important tactics. I want to take you beyond tactics to more fundamental and essential principles that will be long lasting and that will have relevance for you well beyond the present times. On your screen now, you see a photograph of the famous writer, novelist from the United States. His name was John Updike. He's no more now, but he left beyond a vast body of work, literature, and was at one point regarded as the United States' most prolific and well-recognized writer. Now, John Updike was asked the question, what is a writer's duty? And in the context of his answer, which was a literary context, he said the writer's duty is to give the ordinary its beautiful dew. Now, what does that mean in his context? He would look at the lives of the characters he wrote about, and very often those characters were ordinary people living their lives in small New England villages and towns in the United States. And he would look at the normal way they lived their lives, and he would look at it with the lens of beauty. So he would give the ordinary its beautiful due. I thought that this was a lovely way to think about marketing in a very conceptual way. What do we do in marketing is, now we're borrowing the words from John Updike, but we're not borrowing his context. We're now moving those words into the context of business, in the context of brands, in the context of marketing. What do marketers do? What do we do, all of us marketers? We give the ordinary its beautiful due. Now, on your screen, you will see a photograph on the left, which shows you a diamond as it is mined, as it has come out of the ground. It is a piece of compressed carbon without any particular allure or beauty. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will see a photograph of someone putting a ring on someone else's finger. That ring now is not just beautifully cut, shining, set in gold, platinum, or another precious metal. It is going onto a finger with a hugely more important meaning. It is a promise of a lifetime together. It is almost an anticipation of a life that two people are going to live. It is a commitment that they are making to each other. And all of a sudden, an ordinary stone with very little real appeal when it is mined has now gone not just to be a symbol of beauty, but also a symbol of commitment, a symbol of life. This transformation is giving the ordinary its beautiful due. And the people who have participated in the transformation of diamonds to give them their present value, in wrapping a diamond with so much meaning, so much significance, so much value, so much importance, they have done a wonderful job in a way in which perhaps, why couldn't a ruby have been this? Why couldn't an emerald have been this? Why couldn't a sapphire have been this? But it hasn't, because the marketing of diamonds has been given its beautiful due in a remarkable way. And this is what we do in marketing. This is what we do in business. This is conceptually how we make brands attractive, how we make brands magnetic, how we make brands so alluring that people come to the brand and want to have that brand in their lives. So that's a conceptual starting point of what we do in marketing. Now let's turn our eye to a more practical side of marketing, which is business. And I'm sure you must have heard this from your professors. If you haven't, you will very soon. What is the purpose of business? And many people might define business as being the purpose of business as being making profits. Somebody may say it is about doing something for society. There could be a range of answers to what is the purpose of business. But the answer that rings true to me even today, many years after Professor Peter Drucker articulated it for the world, this is the true purpose of business to my mind, which is to create and keep a customer. Without a customer, there is no business. Without marketing, there is no customer. And therefore, when we go into business with this very, very clear, simple lens that we are here to create and keep a customer, it sets the path in motion for us to do a range of activities as a business, which naturally lead with the customer and end with the customer. And therefore, even today, I was in a position similar to yours at the Jamnal Bajar Institute of Management 36 years ago. And I heard this definition of business very early in my time, and it has stayed with me my entire career. It's been like a North Star for me. It always guides me every time I'm thinking about a problem. It's always when I'm helping a client come to a solution, it's always about how can we do something to help create and keep customers. And when customers become really, really attached to brands, they become fans. And when they become fans, their attachment to the brand does not rest only on the performance of the brand, it rests in the total absorption with the brand. Now, if any on this call are like me, fans of Arsenal, you will know that Arsenal is not doing well this year in the English Premier League. However, for the Arsenal fans such as ourselves, that does not diminish our attachment and belief in the club. Yes, we may grumble about certain performances, certain choices, certain team selections, certain performances against specific teams. We may grumble about the manager from point to point, but at our hearts, we are fans of the club, and our attachment to the brand goes way, way, way beyond the simple and the ordinary. And this is what every brand dreams of, having customers who are so attached to you that they are not going to go anywhere else. If you are a brand whose customer just as easily substitutes you with another brand, then you are in a difficult position. If you are a brand whose customers keep coming back to you, no matter what intrinsic value of your brand, then you are in a good place. So the purpose of marketing is to create and keep a customer. The purpose of business is to create and keep a customer. The purpose of marketing is to create and keep a customer, because there is no business without customers, and there are no customers without marketing. And the three essential pillars of these are simple. We're talking about people, we're talking about brands, and we're talking about the connection between people and brands. So the essential pillars of a marketing program are simple. What is not that simple is the understanding, the insight, the depth of knowledge that you can bring to each of these three aspects of marketing. So let's unpack them. Okay, let's look at them each individually. Let's look at people first. Historically, or even in slightly dated marketing practices, it is not uncommon to reduce people to a few sentences of description. My target audience is, and there are, maybe somebody may write something like, they are people who are more than 25 years of age, they could be 25 to 45, they have disposable income, they have the ability to buy motorcycles, if that's the industry you're in, and they have jobs which are white collar. This kind of description of a target audience is very, very common. However, the challenge to this kind of description, this demographic description, is that it does not give you enough handles on why people buy. And if you start to research models that exist for why people behave in certain ways, why they make certain choices, you have to go as far as post-war Maslow's hierarchy of needs to understand the hierarchy by which people buy. But that hierarchy is out of date and does not represent everything that happens in buying behavior today. It is, remember, Maslow's hierarchy is a very good model. It is a valuable model. You must study it. You must understand it. And it gives a good basis for understanding people, but does not give us sufficient information on why people buy. I want to talk to you here about a quote by the famous writer Walt Whitman. He says, "Do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes." Now, what he was trying to say is that people are complex People have many different drivers inside them. People do things for many different reasons at the same time. Sometimes those reasons are contradictory. And inside every human being is this complex engine of motivators that operates. Now, if you contrast this with the earlier suggestion that needs are sequential, as let's say Maslow has put out, or the descriptions of audiences as being simple demographic groups of people, which does not both give us reasons why they buy, you can see why thinking of people in simplistic or sequential way is not helpful. What you should accept is that people have many drivers within them, all working simultaneously, and some of them even contradicting one another. What I've done, which you should see on your screen now, is organized human customer or buying motivators into two segments. On the one hand, we have inner directed motivators. On the other, we have outward directed motivators. Inner directed motivators are the motivators which are the ones that we use in order to do some things for ourselves. When we are looking only at ourselves, looking only inside ourselves for something. And outward directed motivators are those which we use when we are projecting or we are looking to get something from someone else or a group of people or a society. Both these regulators are guided, regulated by influencers, which are money, values, personality, and time. So let's get into this model a little bit further. There are 7 inward directed motivators, inner directed motivators. The first is, well, in no particular order, let me emphasize that when I say the first is good sense, I don't mean that good sense is more important than the others. Good sense is a inner directed motivator. It brings to it aspects such as pragmatism, financial astuteness, convenience. But loving ourselves, self-love, is another very strong motivator. This takes us to things like food, shelter, security. Hedonism, which is just the act of enjoying some consumption, enjoying something, takes us into a whole range of categories. Personal reinvention, nurture greater than nature, changing yourself, making yourself a different person from where you started, adding to yourself as your life progresses with different new skills, different new ways of life, different new ways of presenting and thinking of yourself, all come into personal reinvention. Joy of ownership is a very big inner directed motivator. I like this. I like to own this flat because I like the way it has been prepared. I like where it looks. I like being inside it. I like my car because I like how it accelerates. The joy of ownership. Value-added experiences, which bring expansion, variety, adventure, take you to places like discovering new travel destinations, interest group affiliations, restaurants. This is another inner directed motivator. And private legacy, which is wanting to leave behind of yourself, such as educate children well, such as of cells. Things which are outward directed motivators, like one-upmanship, competition, advancement, getting ahead in life, doing better than somebody else. Attention, wanting people to notice us, wanting people to give us their time, Being appreciated. This is another outward directed motivator, and it often takes us to categories such as clothes, cosmetics, social media. Vanity is a very, very big outward directed motivator. You want to be admired, you want to have followers. Fear of missing out, connection, social credit. Social credit, such as the things that we do things, we buy things, we consume things because it gives us social credit. It opens doors, it influences others, it gives us upward mobility. And of course, then there's public legacy, where you have somebody who goes for elected office or does charity in a very public way. They put their name on a building. These are all outward directed motivators. And you behave according to the amount of money, your personal values, your personality, and the time of making that decision. So, as you can see, this is a very fundamental model of understanding why people buy. And it sits even below categories. This model can apply to cars, it can apply to motorcycles, it can apply to a house, it can apply to a range of categories. Toothpaste, anything. So the first thing, and the one model that I want to leave you with in this talk is this one, that when you think of people, it is very often helpful to go below a specific category, below a specific benefit of a particular category, and go below that and understand, well, why are they buying at all? Because this helps you recruit customers. If I know that you're buying my category because of joy of ownership, I can customize my marketing to you so that I am responding to your need, your motivator of joy of ownership. The same category could also be used in a different way. It could help to move it in the direction of responding to attention as a motivator or to vanity. Because inside all of us human beings, at all points in time, these motivators are churning, forming different attachments with one another and leading us to different categories of or brands. Okay, so let's move on from here to the slide on your screen, which shows you a very simple, reduced customer motivation model. The inner directed motivators I talked about: good sense, self-love, hedonism, joy of ownership, personal reinvention, value-added experiences, private legacy. The outward directed motivators: one-upmanship, FOMO, attention, connection, vanity, social credit, and public legacy, influenced by money, values, personality, and time. So this were some reflections on how you can think of people. Now let's move on and just talk a little bit about brands. On your screen now, you will be seeing a slide which says a century of brand evolution. On the top, you see a timeline: early 1900s, 1970s, 80s, 1990s, 2000, 2010s, and then today. Early 1900s, we mostly had new products being created of different kind. And so essentially what you had were what I call commodities with names. So you had a soap, it cleaned, and maybe, or very often, it had the manufacturer's name. So if Mr. Hudson created the soap, it was called Hudson's soap. And the language of marketing would be all about, this is what the product does. Now jump ahead a little bit. As marketing and business evolved, more products came, competition became more intense. Very often the same manufacturer had multiple brands. Brand names became wider. You didn't only have the manufacturer's name. So the Unilevers of this world had in any one category multiple products. So for in the laundry or the clothes washing category, they now had Surf, they had Wheel, they had Rin, they had Sunlight. They had a whole range of products, brands at different price points. Now it became important that you can't just say that we clean. So brand positioning came about. What was brand positioning in the 70s and 80s? It was essentially about telling you what is good about this one particular brand and why it should be preferred. So brand positioning was very much anchored in product performance, anchored in product benefits. And so if you see that little example I've given you, Super Rin strikes whiter than any other detergent tablet or bar. You can see the competitive aspect of telling people this is something that cleans better than others. And that is because if you read the copy and in the marketing of those days, long before many of you were born, there was this kind of communication that went on. The evolution of brand thinking, what happened was brand positioning became a necessary but insufficient step in the process of brand creation. And so they decided to have something which stood above the product performance. And the idea of a brand idea came about in the 90s. A brand idea was a way to communicate and a way to think about the brand. So if you see that little Rin ad there, you'll see how the lady is whose sari is washed in Rin has a whiter sari than the lady who isn't washing her clothes with Rin. So that white off-white comparison with the lightning streak and the lightning bolt, sorry, and the striking difference, that sort of idea for the brand, that this brand still very much anchored in product, but it has a certain idea behind it. It is about making a difference to how you look versus someone else. And then in the 2010s, we've come forward and we've come into the area of brand ideals, where the brand is not stopping at talking about its product performance. It's trying to talk about something that can be done in life. So in the example that I've shown you there under brand ideals, please just look at the line below the Rin product. It says, chamakte rehna. Now, chamakte rehna is something that you can connect to the performance of the brand on washing in terms of washing clothes. But chamakte rehna is also something that you can attach to a human being, that you can continue to succeed in life, you can do well in life, and the implication is that Rin can help you get that way. So chamakte rehna is a brand ideal. It goes beyond the product. It is about life. Now, what has happened by this time is brands were challenged for being able to do some of these things, say some of these things. Like where we stand today on the 2020s, people say ki Rin keh raha hai chamakte rehna, but I can chamko even without Rin. For me to do well in life, stand out in life, succeed, Rin is not the only ticket to that outcome. So ये brand ideals जो लोग अभी बता रहे हैं, this thing about चमकते रहना and all, it's nice, I like it, but we're not sure that the brand or the product can do anything about that. So that was one shift that had happened. The second shift that has happened is the balance of power has now shifted from what the brand wants to say to how people receive the brand, because now people through social media and through other means of communication can always call out a brand for not being true, not being authentic, not being real, if they feel that the brand is failing them in some way. So the balance of power has shifted to the customer. And therefore, as we enter these next decade, next few years, the call now is for authentic brands, brand authenticity. And remember, I told you, customers have now become multidimensional. So brands also have to become multidimensional and respond to different needs in customers. So the 2020s, when I told you I'm presenting you a 2020s handbook today, the 2020s is a time of multi-dimensional authentic brands. Not just some bump that you put in communication or some clever line that you put in your communication. No. Customers will evaluate brands on 8 parameters wrapped around the core of the brand. The first thing is performance. Do you do what you say you will do? You promise me something, do you do that or not? Now, suppose you promise something, I'm just making this up as an example, we won't take any brand, but suppose you promise that your car will accelerate from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds, let us say. Now, somebody will put you to the test and say, do you do that or not? Now, assuming, of course, that going from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds is important to somebody. I don't think it needs to be important to anyone personally, but assuming it is important to somebody, do you perform in the manner you do? You say you remove stains from white clothes. Do you remove stains or not? You say that your garment will look like new. Well, does it look like new or not? So this is the performance aspect. The second is the product interface. Now, many of you on the call will have seen cars only in the present times, where most of the cars in our market today are very nice cars with many good features, lots of very many gadgets, many little benefits. But those of us who have seen the car market back in the 70s, 80s, there used to be only Ambassador, Fiat, a little bit of Standard Herald, and that was it. And those cars did not provide a very enjoyable, easy to use product interface. Those cars, if you roll down the window may not go up. Those cars, if you climb a steep ghat, sometimes you have to park at the side of the road and wait for the car to cool down. Until Maruti came and changed the product interface in India. So in the 80s, when Maruti came, if you put an indicator and you did a turn, the indicator, that little lever, it snapped back. It brought power steering into the market. It brought electric windows into the market. It brought a whole range of features which made the interface with the product not just easier, but more enjoyable. And today, look at where we are. We expect so much from the product interface of our cars, our phones, our TVs, our laptops, and so on. Price. Price gives you multiple points of conversation with the customer. Price establishes who you are. It is a statement of confidence. It's a statement how strongly your brand is liked by people. You will find that brands which don't have particularly good relationships with customers, they keep dropping their price to try and keep the customer. This is different from tactical price drop, okay? This is, you find certain brands will say, we are not able to satisfy our customers, so just let's stay cheap. Maybe they'll buy us for that reason. MTNL. No matter how cheap they are, you are not really connected with that brand, so you would not really want to pay any price for it. Whereas a very expensive car, a very expensive phone, it gives you everything that you require. Despite the high price, it has value for you. The value equation is strong, and you say you want to have that brand. Service is important. All brands have a service aspect. Impact on planet. What are you doing for the world? Plastics. Are you a brand that is creating a lot of plastic waste in the country? Are you a brand that does not embrace diversity, that does not embrace inclusion? Culture. What is the culture of your brand? How do your people behave? How do you behave with your people? Is there any sense that your brand does not treat people well? Storytelling. How do you tell people about yourself? How do you observe the world? How do you do various things? And finally, customer experience, which is overall everything put together. How do I feel about you as a brand? And customers are evaluating you on all these parameters nowadays, because customers evaluate brands as multidimensional people. Years ago, if you said, just this is what I do, my performance is this, it was enough. But today it's not. And just to reduce that into the form of a model, this is the brand model for the 2020s, my brand model for the 2020s, which I use in my consulting work, which I have written about in my book, The Brand Octagon, which at the center has the core. Why are you here? What do you do? How do you do it? And surrounding that, performance, product interface, pricing, service, impact on planet, culture, storytelling, customer experience. So, people, multidimensional. Brands, multidimensional. Now, how do you create a connection between the two? Before I come to showing you a model for connection, let me just talk about this customer clusters model. On the y-axis, you have satisfaction, where, by the way, that little symbol BBNA, that's my company symbol there, so just ignore that. That has no part to play in our talk today. But on the y-axis, satisfaction, which can be either high or low. And on the x-axis, exit barriers / risk of change. So this is the two axis. Now, let's look at this model. In categories where, well, in any category for that matter, if it is possible for a customer to try you a little bit to figure out how you are, you enter that category as a dipper. So you try the product. You don't have any high exit barriers. You can leave when you like. And your satisfaction can be anything. You don't really have any particular benchmark of satisfaction yet. You enter a category as a dipper. Suppose you find that you really like the brand. You really like what the brand does. You really like, it gives you a lot of satisfaction. Let's use the example of Magnum ice cream when we talk about this. Magnum, you try a Magnum. What happens if you don't like the Magnum? Big deal. You won't have other. So your exit expectations for Magnum. I don't know what. And love the chocolate taste. You love the thickness of chocolate taste. Let's say you have a and you love the way the whole experience is. And you move from your desire really want that. And all low, all changes low, you have a high satisfaction. Repeat that very often. From there, you're so high in satisfaction that you raise your barrier and you become a devotee. Satisfaction. And when you're eating ice cream, only Magnum will do. Magnum not available if it ice cream nahi khauga. I don't want ice cream. If I eat ice cream, I will eat Magnum. This kind of behavior is a devotee behavior from a customer. And last is detainee, somebody who does not have a high satisfaction with your brand, does not want to be a part of your brand, does not like your brand, but cannot leave for some reason because the exit barrier is high. Now, I'll give you an example of that. Way back some years ago, when mobile phones started in India, we had only a limited number of service providers, and then it grew in numbers. So suppose you were with a certain service provider. Now, we gave our mobile phone number, as we continue to do today, to a number of government services. Our biggest things, you give your Aadhaar card, for example, you may have given your bank your number, you may have given some government service your number. So suppose you were unhappy with the service provided by the mobile phone company, you could not leave. You had to suffer their bad service because your exit barrier was so high. But now with mobile number portability, you can exit while you retain your number. And so that exit barrier was removed. And naturally, as a result, people started moving to brands which were better on performance. You don't want to have your customers in the detainees box because they will vociferously and publicly complain about you. And they will damage your brand equity because they will tell people that I'm not happy with this brand. You want your customers to be in the desirers and devotees boxes. How do you do that? You do that by managing the moments of truth between a customer and a brand. That's when a customer and a brand come so close to each other that important information about the brand is exchanged with the customer. Let me tell you two moments of truth stories from the personal experience stories from the aviation sector. In the introduction, you heard that I'd spent some time in Dubai. When I was in Dubai, I used to have a client who was a division of the General Motors Corporation, who are based, the headquarters of General Motors is in a town called Southfield, in the state of Michigan, which is close to Detroit. So if you wanted to go to Southfield, you had to fly to Detroit. I used to go there once a year, typically at the end of the year, to reconcile the year's business and continue the business in the next year. I did this for about 5 years. Now, to fly to Detroit, the best way to do it from Dubai was to fly to London and then take Northwest, which is the airline you see on the left. And their hub was Detroit, so you could fly Northwest from Heathrow to Detroit and then go by road to Southfield. I did this fairly regularly, once a year. Once, when I was coming back from Detroit, I was checking in at the Northwest hub, at the Northwest terminal. And this is what happened in the check-in row next to me, not to me. What I'm describing did not happen to me. It happened to another passenger in the row next to me. I'm standing there checking in. The gentleman who's checking in on the row next to mine, he's somebody who came there in the morning and was told by Northwest that his onward flight had been cancelled. He had been made to wait several hours for his new connection. Now he had been called to check in and he was being told the flight that they were going to checking him in on was going to be after another 4 hours and would be going to his destination through another city. Now the gentleman was tired. He'd been sitting around at the airport a long time. When he heard this news, he got upset. He raised his voice. The Northwest staff on the other side raised her voice. Hot words were exchanged from both sides. And the Northwest check-in lady called security. Two big bouncer-like guys came and they escorted the passenger away. I had a perfectly great check-in, but this happened in my eye shot, and it changed the atmosphere at the check-in for not just for me, for all the other guests, all the other passengers who started thinking that if Northwest can behave like that with that passenger, maybe they can behave like that with me sometime. And I can't speak for the other passengers, but I never flew Northwest on that sector again. I switched my airline and I started going with another airline, even at difficulty to myself. Now, check-in is a big moment of truth in airline travel. This was an example how a moment of truth had become a moment of misery. You don't want your customers having moments of misery with your brands, because if they have moments of misery, they'll be detainees or they'll dip out. You want them to have very, very good moments of truth with you. And so let me give you the example of Virgin Atlantic, which gave me a very different experience. Later on in my career, based in London, I had Japan as part of my responsibility. I would fly to Japan once a month for nearly a year. I flew Virgin Atlantic. On one of the flights, the flight attendant who was serving my section, she said to me, "What do you like when you take off?" So I said, "I would like a Virgin Mary," because I didn't drink alcohol on flights. So I'd like a Virgin Mary. She said, "Fine. When the seatbelt sign goes off, I'll bring you your drink." She brought my Virgin Mary. The flight went off without any trouble. I landed, I went, I did my business. 2 days in Tokyo, came back, flying back after 2 days on Virgin. And by a remarkable coincidence, the same flight attendant was serving my section again. I happened to be in the exact same seat. And as I was boarding, she saw me and said, "Oh, Mr. Bambawale, welcome back." Once we're in the air and the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, "I will bring you your Virgin Mary." This lady had converted a moment of truth, which is embarkation, sitting down, finding your seat, settling in, into a moment of magic for me, because she'd remembered me, she remembered my drink, and she had offered me nice service. After that, I only flew Virgin on any sector which they flew, which I was traveling on. Brands are made in these moments of truth. Yes, many other aspects of brands are important. Branding on a pack is important. Brand name helps. Advertising helps. But the moments of truth make the difference between a customer becoming a desirer, like I became, a devotee, like I became, versus somebody who is unhappy and dipping out. So, when you're creating connections with customers, you have to manage the moments of truth. And You have to manage moments of truth along the entire relationship journey. With any brand, a customer will go through discovery, companionship, exclusivity, and belonging. And the customer response in discovery will, if you do it well, if you handle that stage well, if you handle the moments of truth well, you handle marketing communication well, the response will be, to discovery will be, I'm curious. In companionship, the response should be, I'm excited by this brand. Excuse me. In exclusivity, the response is, I'm committed to this brand. And in belonging, the response is, I'm fulfilled by this brand. I'm happy with this brand. I would expand my use of the brand. This is a journey that all customers will go through. And your behavior at each stage of the journey as a brand is different, as is explained in this model. I'll just briefly touch upon it, and then we can end my presentation. The journey from independence to interdependence. Independence is where the customer is using some method, has some solution to what he needs, which does not include you. And interdependence is when the solution that the customer is looking for, the problem that the customer is looking to solve, the motivator that the customer is looking to fulfill cannot be fulfilled without you being in it. Therefore, you are interdependent. The 4 steps of the journey: discovery, companionship, exclusivity, belonging, and there's brand behavior. How do you behave as a brand in discovery? Get noticed, express point of view, display personality, create relevance. And in companionship, for example, if somebody's buying a car, they spend a lot of time in companionship, watching videos on YouTube, going to car comparison sites, looking at cars on the street, asking friends. So this is the time that you have to spend time with your customer, making sure that they are exhilarated, surprised, and the attention is personalized. In exclusivity, your customer says, yes, I will buy you, I will be with you. Some people think that this is the end of the customer journey. It is not. The day of acquiring the customer is the most important day for a brand. This is the time that you have to really make the contact special. This is why unboxing is so important. This is because the customer is now bringing all his or her expectations from the category and laying it on your brand's door. You have to satisfy them. So exclusivity is not because the customer signed a check on behalf of your brand. This is not the end of the journey. In many ways, this is the start of the journey. If a brand is beautifully unboxed, like Apple, like Bose, they spend time in thinking, how should my customer receive my product? How should they open it? How should they feel when they see the product coming out of the box? Versus some other brand that does not pay attention to this. Just when you should be feeling really happy, you're having trouble, you're having to call a call center, the call center is not responding to your needs, etc., etc. You don't want that. You want your customer to be really happy. And that will then take them to, when you be in the belonging phase, where they feel fulfilled, and they'll expand and increase their use of you or your brand. So the last stage, we spoke about connection. In connection, we spoke about how we want to move customers into being desirers and devotees through managing moments of truth across the entire brand relationship journey. Now, everything I've told you is in my book, 9 Timeless Nuggets, Essential Marketing for the Young and Ambitious. It's come out 2 months ago. It's doing very well. I'm pleased to tell you, I'm getting great responses both from experienced marketeers as well as new marketeers. This book is written for you, for young marketeers who are still students or soon entering their careers, or for people who are in the first decade of their careers. It gives all the ideas I've been sharing in the form of an easy-to-read book. I would encourage you to buy it. I think you would enjoy reading it and find a lot of useful and helpful information for you as you embark on your careers as marketeers. And to conclude, therefore, just before I take the presentation off the screen, I am now done with my presentation. I'm open for questions. And I just want to say one final thing about questions is that I'd love to hear from you. And the best question I receive, I am going to send that student a signed copy of my book as a token of appreciation for his or her question. and you can expect to receive that from me really soon. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to take the presentation off the screen now, and we can talk.
Good morning, sir. Adrian here.
Yes, Adrian.
So I had a question. So, like you just spoke about consumer.
Can you?
Yeah.
I think if I remember the Ridya's introduction, I think she wants for the questions to come on chat. Am I right? Did I hear that right?
Okay, yeah, I can.
So if students are ready to turn on the mic and ask, they can do that.
Okay, then go
Or
ahead.
if
Please go
comfortable with
ahead.
the chat.
Yes, sir. So you spoke about consumer. You just gave an example with Apple and Bose. They take time and spend. They take the way they present their unboxing basically. So like Apple in the past years and in this year currently. So part of their like strategy was like last year they decided to remove the headphone jack. No more. They didn't, in the packaging do not include earphones. So this year there was no charger. So how do you take this kind of decision, right? So it's like an unboxing. So like you said, it has to be something special and unique for the consumer. Like, but does it come as a surprise? Like when you unbox, like there's no charger, there's no earphones, there's no accessories as you go on. Like, how does the company take that kind of controversial decision, like not to include such a thing in that unboxing experience, that package? And like, how do they get away with it? Because it's a big thing in the end. A charger's not. It's about $100 plus, so that's around 6-7 thousand. So how do they get away with it? Still there are still they still people still tend to go for the product. Sales are still increasing. So how do they make that decision without it backfiring, or will it backfire? So, but they just go on with the thing is like they just take that decision, no, without any prior repercussions or anything like that. So that's my question.
Okay, so if I understand your question, your disappointment with the unboxing experience from Apple is that your expectations of what you would receive in the package were not met. Your expectations were that the package would include a charger, it would include headphones, it would include some of these accessories alongside the phone.
Yes, sir.
When you unboxed and you found that those were not included, you were disappointed. And for you, the unboxing experience was not as fulfilling as it should have been.
Yes, correct.
Now, the question is, did Apple manage your expectations well? Did they help you expect what you were expecting, or did they not do a good job of that? For example, had you known that the only thing you'll find in the box is the phone, and the charger and other things have to be purchased separately, maybe you would have not been so disappointed. Because you did not know that, because you were expecting this in a much more complete form, you were disappointed. And then that led you to ask the question, well, how are you getting away with this, right? How are you still growing as a brand despite the fact that you disappointed me? That might be because other customers do not share the same expectation as you. They already know that they're only going to receive the phone and that they're going to have to buy the charger and buy the headphones separately. So the point that your question raises is an important and a good one, which is, how do we manage expectation as a brand so that customers get what they are expecting to get as the first threshold of delivery, and then enjoy how the product is revealed and comes to them? If the brand, in this case Apple, does not handle that well, you end up with a customer like yourself who says, hey, where are the other things? Where's the phone I got? Yes, but where is the charger? Where are the headphones? I expected they would be in the box. Your point raises the issue of management of expectation of customers so that customers are clear about what they're going to receive. And if they manage the expectations well, then people will not be disappointed with the brand. They will evaluate the unboxing experience only for the phone, and therefore continue to be happy and satisfied and continue to be desirous and devotees of Apple. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have some questions that came on WhatsApp. So one is, what is the disruption caused by technology?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What is the disruption caused by technology?
What is disruption caused by technology? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's just while that question is not directly associated with my talk, I think I can respond to it. When we look at the way in which people consume categories, the manner in which various things are consumed remains unchanged. Sorry, what people consume remains largely unchanged. The manner in which they consume it keeps changing, and that's where technology is playing a part. Let me take the example of, for example, let's start with the information, the desire to be informed every morning. Way back, even before I was born, the primary and perhaps the only source of getting information about the world was the newspaper. And the newspaper had huge circulations. They were easily the most powerful media in the world. Movies have been made about newspaper magnates, people who have created huge empires managing information, managing the news. Little later, television came. Television became an alter. Before television, radio came. Consuming information. You did not have to wait 24 hours to consume, hear about the developments in the world. You could get it on the news. If the morning news told you something and more events happened, the afternoon news could update you, the evening news could update you. And then television came along, that happened as well. What's happening here? Printing as a method of getting information is disrupted by radio, is disrupted by television, and in today's times is disrupted by technology, which you use a phone or another device to actually get information about the world. Simultaneously, what is also being disrupted is who is giving you that information. In the past, a journalist gave you the information. He researched the topic in manners in which his editors required him to, whether he was a radio journalist, whether he was a television journalist, whether he was a newspaper journalist. The journalist, as the medium of giving you the information, is now being challenged by the citizen journalism of social media, which is made possible by technology. Alongside that disruption, where the person giving you the news is changing, the reliability of the news is also changing. So the handheld device is no longer a reliable source of information. And alongside that, because the person who's giving you that information is not the same person of the past, he's not a credentialed journalist. In this example, I'll add one more dimension to it, which is, of course, Google, which is a source of information. So your search starts with Google. With most people, the search only extends as far as the first page, and within the first page, typically the first 4 or 5 listings. So while the amount way in which you're looking at that information is decreasing, you're looking at it in shorter bands, you want less and less, smaller and smaller information is increasing. So is doing 2 things or 3 things. First is it is changing whom you accept or receive information from. Secondly, it is changing how often you receive that information. Thirdly, it is changing how brands can present themselves in the context of a technology-led information bazaar. Okay, so that's how I'll answer your question. Can we go to the next question, please?
Yes, sir. So we have a question from Mohammed Faruqi. What have been your challenging brand assignments in your career?
I could not hear you very well. What has been 1989. Can you still hear me?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear now.
Okay, sorry. I think there might have been some blip. What was the question again?
Uh, what have been your most challenging brand assignments in your career?
Okay. Okay. So I think I would certainly say that the global relaunch of Sunsilk when I was at J. Walter Thompson in London in the year 2008 through to 2010 was the most challenging because we relaunched one Unilever brand in 60 countries at the same time. Now, what we had to do was analyze in a representation. We could not do detailed analysis in all 60 countries. So we had to take a representation of countries from Asia, from Europe, from Latin America, and so on. And we had to analyze where the brand was in that individual market and what needed to be done to relaunch the brand. What we found was that in most countries around the world, customers liked Sunsilk. They had affection for the brand, but they did not think it was a very good shampoo. So they did not think that the product performance was contemporary anymore. They had working out. They did not think of this. They did not taken category since the last relaunch of Sunsilk. So it was capabilities into the brand, and we researched the world for different kinds of hair types. For example, somebody found in Europe, who was an expert in curls. In Japan, we found a lady called Yumiko, who was an expert in straight hair. And we worked with these experts, 6 different kinds of experts from different parts of the world. We worked with them to fine-tune and improve the product formulation first. Now, after that, we had to find a way in which to communicate the changes in such a way that we could do it across 60 countries without having to make 60 different ads. So the next step was to actually find ways in which we could cluster countries and also provide each country with a central nugget or, if you like, engine of performance that they could communicate with, and they could put the external trappings themselves. So this we did in 2008. We relaunched Sunsilk in 60 countries in 2009, and by 2010, we had grown the brand by about 10% globally, which on a base of a size of that brand, which is nearly $1 billion in size, was a significant improvement in the brand's performance. That, I would say, was the most challenging experience of my career. Next question, please.
Yes. This question is from Karthik. So he says, Goa is famous for cashew fenny, which has also got a GI status. What are the steps to take to make the brand international?
So first and foremost, Feni is not a brand. It is a category of drink, if you like. And within that, there are brands, as some of you will be aware already. I think Kazulo is one such brand, isn't it? I think it's an excellent point. I think that's a great product category that Goa is proud of and should be able to take to a much wider audience globally. There are people who very much look forward to appreciating Feni and enjoying it no matter where they are in the world. I have a feeling that the Feni branding is at a very, very early stage. I think you have just some old brands which have been around for some time, but which don't do much marketing. And 1 or 2 new brands, one of which is Kazulo, I think, which is a brand which is packaging well, giving Feni, removing Feni from the connotation of being a home-brewed beverage to being a more marketable beverage. There is also a movement of people who are doing infused Fenis of their own in the cottage industry kind of way. So there is activity around the Feni segment. The question is, can this activity translate into big global success? I believe it can. I think you have to work on branding, packaging, understanding the brand in its fullness, uh, putting together a strong manufacturing base, putting together a complete annual supply pipeline, um, investing in making more people enjoy Feni, and it is eminently possible to do. I'm sure the brands who are active in this space right now are looking at these problems and looking at these challenges on an ongoing basis, and I'm pretty sure very soon we will see a proliferation of not just brands making Feni, but also the international success of Feni. Next one.
So there's a student, ICCR student, Vesudin, who asks, how can we grow branded goods versus replicas in countries with weak economy?
Because by weak economies, I would imagine that the person asking the question means economies which don't have a high amount of disposable income. Yeah. Brands occupy every level in the price quality ladder. Back in the days of the detergent wars in India, you had brands like Surf, which were very important. You had brands like Nirma, which were very cheap. Nirma was not a weaker brand than Surf. On the contrary, Nirma was a very, very strong brand in its time. And again, I'm not sure this example is the right one for you because many of you may not have known about the detergent wars of the 80s and would not have known about Nirma as being the big brand it used to be in those days. If you haven't heard of this, I'm sure I can think of another example more contemporary. But for a moment, staying with that example, there are two. Essentially, what happens is when there's a large number of people at the bottom of a market who don't have high disposable income, this does not mean that they don't have an appetite to consume brands. They do have an appetite to consume brands. They do consume brands, and they do buy things which are branded over commodity. They only buy them at a different price point and in a different price quality equation. Let's look now at the market for bicycles. The top end of the market for cycles, a small group of highly enthusiastic cycling clubs and cycling groups where the members of those groups invest huge amounts of money to buy their bicycles. I've heard of people who put lakhs of rupees into the bicycle that they ride on. At the other end of the spectrum, you have a reliable Indian black, Hercules kind of bike. To my mind, Hercules is just as strong a brand in its segment as, let's say, a very accomplished brand at the top end of the market is in its segment. The people in that brand will evaluate choices of other products, other brands available at that price point, and they will opt in favor of the brand that has a better price quality connotation over time.
Yeah. Are people able to hear? I'm not able to hear.
No, I don't think anyone is able to hear. I think Bharat has lost his connection. He'll join in. Just give him a minute.
Yeah, he'll probably join in.
Yeah.
Sweet. Nilesh, your mic is on.
Yeah, I know, sir.
Hello, I'm sorry about that. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just finished up that question that I was asked about buying brands in weak economies. So we can move to the next one.
Yes, sir. Next question is from Ketan. You referred customer as fans. So fans expects their best from the brands. So how to prepare for the unexpected things?
Yeah. There are, first and foremost, those of you who have heard Neil deGrasse Tyson, the famous astrophysicist, speak. He talks about how the advance of science reduces unpredictability, So the best way to deal with the unexpected is to prepare harder yourself. And the best way to prepare harder yourself is to innovate based on a plan by which you are improving your own product on an ongoing basis. Now, fans are extremely loyal and committed customers. Yeah. They are people whose attachment to the brand far exceeds smaller and ups and downs in the brand performance. They're very, very committed to the brand. How do they get that way? They get that way with a sustained exposure and commitment from the brand to a high degree of satisfaction by anticipating some of the needs or motivators or additional requirements that the customer might have before the customer can voice it. And by providing for that through a system of innovation that you've built into your brand. The brands which don't have a program of innovation within themselves are likely to quickly start to see a decay in their customer satisfaction levels and therefore a loss of fans. Customers who become fans look for more new, better, higher, better things from the brand. And therefore, when brands have a program of innovation, and innovation has two parts to it. One is making what you've already got better. And the second is making new things which will help make customer lives better. So there's both aspects to innovation. Innovation is not just about thinking outside the box. Innovation is about thinking inside the box as well to make things inside the box better, your existing product better. Suppose a customer is buying you at, let's say, at 1,000 rupees per washing machine. They want to see a better washing machine at 1,000 rupees. They don't only want to see a G-Whiz washing machine at 5,000 rupees. And therefore, my answer to that question is the best way to keep people as fans is to continuously be aware of the little dissatisfactions that your brand may be creating, overcoming those dissatisfactions by an internal program of innovation, and bringing new things which will help the fan feel happier, better, more connected to your brand. So I hope that answers Ketan's question.
Yes, sir. So we have two more questions.
Right. We'll take those two questions and then we'll stop. Yeah?
Yes, sir. Priya is asking, on international arena, would culture play a role?
Yes, Priya, I do believe it does. Culture, there are many levels of culture. Culture is, for example, at the simplest definition of culture is how we do things around here. Yeah. And organizations may have overtly stated and mandated cultures, and they may have practiced cultures. Nobody needs to be told by a diktat of or by a diktat on a particular. Um, excuse me one sec, yeah. Just give me a sec. My apologies. So nobody really needs to be told not to misbehave in a place of work, but companies make that clear. Companies make that clear that you should not be exhibiting certain forms of behavior. By hiring people who simply embody the things that you believe in, you create a better culture for yourself and you create a better culture for your organization. And the organizations which have a dedication to customer, who keep customers important, who look after their people well, whose people behave well, are more likely to succeed than organizations which are run by some dictatorial principles or by some sort of investigations and so on. Now, to the point that Priya raises uh, about whether the culture has a context in the international scene, of course it does. There are certain aspects of every, let's say, a national culture, which is good on an international stage. And there are certain aspects of any country's culture which are not received so positively on the international stage. When news reporting about a certain brand or a certain company reaches international markets, it will be received in a certain way by the receiving market. For example, if a country is presented on the international stage as violating human rights, then that country is perceived a particular way by the international community. If a company is seen by the international community as practicing certain ways of behavior which are not okay, which are not acceptable to people around the world, then that company will be looked at in a certain way. So culture is very important. National culture is very important. Company culture is very important. And that culture becomes manifest in the manner in which the people of every country interact with people of other countries and other companies and customers. So to Priya's point, yes, culture is very important. And it is a distinguishing feature. And it provides competitive advantage in certain contexts. Shall we take the last one?
Sir, good morning. This is Godfrey here.
Go ahead, Godfrey.
Yeah, sir. So I was looking at the bigger narrative of how branding thing and how you wrote in your book the three main stages: how to think of people, how to craft your brand, and later on how we enter the market, right, sir? But what I feel is, we as an individual, when we go into branding, we lack the later on part, sir. So what is your thing about the later on part after we establish the brand? Like you see huge companies like Media and stuff like that, they have something that they do consistent, so that holds their brand value. What is in your idea that, for an individual brand point of view, that a person can do, that he can actually keep the branding himself and keep going up the ladder?
When you say up the ladder, you mean be more successful in business?
No, I'm talking about personal brand here, sir.
Oh, you're talking about personal brands. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay. The principles that apply to a corporate brand and the principles that apply to a personal brand are more or less the same. More or less the same, yeah? You need to know, first of all, that you can't be everything to everybody. So we're talking about the first point about how do you think of people. You can't be everything to everybody. One person's star is another person's okay person, right? There could be people on this call who really admire a particular actor or really admire a particular public personality, and somebody else on this call who doesn't think the same way about that person. What this means is that when you think of people, you have to think about where and to whom are you relevant as a brand. This is as important for a personal brand as it is for a corporate brand. Which is why when sometimes a person in public life starts to comment on areas which are not believed to be his or her core competency, eyebrows are sometimes raised or an adverse reaction is received saying, why is that person talking about that subject? He or she does not know enough about that subject to be listened to. Could happen, right? That there's an adverse reaction because the brand has stepped out of its area of competence and is trying to use its popularity to try and get into a adjacent or a distant area which it is not really strong in. So, to the first point, as a personal brand, you should be clear about who am I relevant to in terms of people. That's the first section of the book, how to think of people. Second section of the book is how to craft your brand. So having understood which audience, which kind of people, what mindsets am I responding to, you need to define very clearly who you are as a brand. What is your core? Why are you here? What do you do? Why do you do it? After that, you have to define clearly when you talk about performance, what do I achieve for people? Or what do I achieve in the world? And so on. Go around the brand octagon and try and define your brand in as comprehensive a way as possible. Now you've got clarity on people, you've got a clarity on who you are as a brand. The third point, the third section of my book is how to go to market. How do you bring this brand and these people together? You need a platform for relevance, right? You need something that engages your audience through a relevant point. Let us say that you are let's say you are a brand who offers, as a person, a brand who offers an alternate point of view on how we can save the world. Or that's too broad a subject. An alternate point of view on how to clean Goa, how to make Goa clean, how to remove rubbish from the streets or something like that. Suppose you're a brand who has an alternate point of view on that. So obviously, you need to find the audience who thinks about this and connect with that audience. In this particular case, social media and various other forms, forums, places where you can present your point of view, places where you can share your research, propose your reports, engage with people in the subject. All that becomes the place to go to. But what are you doing there? You can't just go and start throwing information at people. What are you going to do there? You have to take people through that customer journey. Let them discover your brand. Let them spend time with your personal brand. Let them, when I say exclusivity, in the case of a personal brand, it becomes somebody that they embrace in their lives. And then they have a continuing relationship with, which is in the context of the last box, which is belonging or fulfillment. So the principles that I outlined in this talk and which are in my book are as applicable if you think about a personal brand as they are to a corporate brand.
So, sir, what you're saying is, like me, you also believe that the process is much more important rather than having an influencer do it for me. Am I right, sir?
Okay, now I completely agree with you, and I am controversial personally on the subject of influencers. But if I say something controversial on this call, you must not quote me.
Because I do believe
I don't believe in the power of influencers personally. I feel that they cost a lot of money for too little value. I believe the brand can talk its own talk and walk its own walk much more confidently without influencers. But if that is your point, Godfrey, yeah.
Yes, very much. So, like okay. That's what I believe in the process. Like, if I show the people the process of how I began, that's going to give me much more value to build an actual better brand and bring an influence in, right, sir?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Cool. Got it. So obviously, this is a subject which is vast, and we're not going to cover it all in 1.5 hours, nor are we going to touch every aspect of marketing. Marketing is a very vast subject. Many people are lecturing, talking, writing. There are many books published. As a young practitioner, you should consume and read and absorb from many places. No, it's not like one book will give you the whole meaning of life, as it were. I'm very confident my book has a lot of ideas to share with you, so I do encourage you to buy it. I will connect with Nilesh after the call to let him know who we'll give the book to as a prize. And just before I end, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you. Also, a special thank you to Professor Dayanand. Professor Dayanand, I hope you will accept a book from me as a token of my appreciation. And also, and thank you. I just finishing it up on thank you. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Bambawale. Sorry, I'm using Professor Nilesh's mobile because we are in a meeting outside. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking all your time off, and it was very interesting. It took me back to my Colgate days, in fact. So so I was just looking at the kind of exposure that you have had in the industry. It's something which is very, very valuable in terms of, and I'm sure you would have brought all those things back into the book which you've published recently. Okay. So thank you once again, and wish you all the best as far as the book is concerned. I'm sure it will add value to the lives of a lot of people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Nice talking to you.
Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. So I would like to request Ketan to kindly give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Rudhi. A very good morning to all. On behalf of Goa Business School, it gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for today's Fomento lecture series. First and foremost, I would like to thank our today's speaker, founder of Bharat Bambawale and Associates, SHRI Bharat Bambawale sir. In spite of your busy schedule, you have given us time to grace this session. Sir, we have an extremely useful information from your session. We learn a lot about the current marketing essential. The way you have explained us the 2020's perspective was feel like keep on listening to you. Thank you so much, sir. Also, my heartfelt thanks to our Dean, Professor Dayanand sir, our Program Director, Nilesh Bode sir, for organizing and coordinating for such a wonderful session. Last but not the least, I thank my friends for your cooperation in making this session a memorable success. Once again, I thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.